Hey buddies, yeah, they gave us false information, or maybe they didn't fully disclose the truth, or only shared half-truths, who knows for sure. The issue is, they deceived us and even took our identity. I am referring to the reality of acknowledging ourselves and feeling a sense of pride in being Hispanic, of communicating in a shared language and embracing a culture, traditions, music, cuisine, and even a perspective on the world. The documentary Hispanoamérica, A Song of Life and Hope, has the aim of correcting that great injustice, shattering that black legend that has persisted for over 200 years. Don't go, this is for you. I'm Constantino de Miguel, welcome to the channel. From my perspective, firstly, let me clarify that simply because everyone states it, does not imply that the term Latin America is accurate. It is a fallacy. Did you know that it was invented by Napoleon III to extend French dominion in Mexico? Well, that is a completely different story. Just to inform you, we are not Latinos, we are Hispanics because the Spanish language and culture bring us together, whether we prefer it or not. And that is the thesis masterfully demonstrated in Latin America, Song of Life and Hope. It is a lengthy yet delectable documentary that is exhibited in cinemas in Spain, with any luck, soon in Latin America, and can additionally be viewed on the internet. I had the pleasure of attending the premiere of the movie in Barcelona. I was truly struck by the excitement and applause from the audience. It was evident that everyone who speaks this language and belongs to this culture should see it. The experience was a great pleasure, and I highly recommend it to anyone interested in this film. Well, I am not going to spoil it for you and tell you the entire movie. I just wanted to comment on it and encourage you to watch it, because I am sure it will not only provide you with essential knowledge about our history, but also fill you with joy and pride, and awaken that sense of belonging that all individuals as human beings inherently possess within themselves. In my case, the documentary Hispanoamérica, Canto de Vida y Esperanza, moves me to recognize and promote, with my humble means, the great potential we have as a civilization, despite 2 centuries of turbulent separation.
La historia mítica que late en el corazón y en las mentes de muchísimos hispanoamericanos es completamente falsa y muy peligrosa.
The movie starts by debunking the simplistic and clearly untrue stereotype that suggests the indigenous population resided in a utopian paradise, only to have their peaceful existence shattered by the merciless arrival of bearded conquerors who decimated the native people, enslaving the survivors and plundering their precious reserves of gold and silver while subjecting them to a long and harrowing period of captivity. Well, the arguments against that perception referred to as the Black Legend are extremely damaging, and they are clearly shown in the movie. Today it is rigorously proven that this apocalyptic vision was spread by a Dominican friar named Bartolomé de las Casas in his book titled Brevísima Relación de la Destrucción de las Indias. Currently, historians concur in categorizing that book as propaganda, misinformation, or, as we would state presently, fake news, because of its absence of documentary rigor and its obvious exaggerations characteristic of the time period. The civilian monk was an expert in hyperbole, even though he, like other Spaniards, condemned the violence that did take place in the early stages of the conquest, and therefore advocated for regulation, which was eventually implemented. Indeed, violence and abuse were gradually rectified thanks to the laws of the Indies, which acknowledged that indigenous people were free subjects and could not be enslaved. They had to be educated and evangelized in order to bring about positive change. Yeah, a paternalistic perspective, but a long way off from the mindset of other Europeans who had no reservations about eliminating anyone who was not similar to them. In any event, the book by Las Casas was translated into numerous languages and extensively illustrated in Flanders, with engravings depicting dogs inflicting torture upon the indigenous people. That book was a genuine bestseller in the 16th and 17th centuries, and it became a propaganda weapon for the Dutch, who were in the process of gaining independence from Spain, for the English, who coveted territories in America, and also for the French, who were also competing with Spain for dominance in Europe. The thing is, that was the beginning of the black legend that made its way into the Anglo-Saxon world, and even ended up colonizing the minds of Spaniards on both sides of the Atlantic. The terrible thing is that those Spaniards, Americans, or Creoles, once they became independent from the Spanish monarchy in the early 19th century, despite being precisely the worst abusers and plunderers of the indigenous people, embraced that black legend as their own. They made adaptations to their content in order to denigrate or silence the 300 years of the colonial period, which, with its ups and downs, were, especially in the beginning, a true golden age in Spanish America, characterized by both achievements and challenges. The truth is that upon the arrival of the Spaniards, there was a gap of 3,000 years in terms of development and evolution. This gap separated the Europeans from the thousands of American peoples who were engaged in wars of great cruelty among themselves, where some peoples subjected others not only to slavery but also to cannibalism, practices that were prevalent in that time period. The few Spaniards who arrived discovered themselves in communities that perceived them as their rescuers. Finally, as the documentary shows, it wasn't Cortés who conquered Mexico, but the Tlaxcalas. It wasn't Pizarro who conquered Cuzco, but other enemy Andean ethnic groups of the Incas. It was not Benalcázar who conquered Quito, but the Canary people who marched with him. Yes, as Argentine historian Marcelo Gullo says, who appears in the documentary, the conquest was made by indigenous people in Hispanoamerica. Song of Life and Hope, it speaks of the civilizing effort that completely contradicts and invalidates the black legend, thus rendering it invalid. Why bother establishing thousands of cities, hundreds of hospitals and universities if the objective was to exterminate the Indians? Why bother creating grammars for Nahuatl or Quechua, Guarani or Aymara when a genocide was being perpetrated and actively practiced? Why bother teaching the Indians how to weave their Castilian clothes, reside in towns, introduce them to European animals such as chickens, pigs, cows, and horses, cultivate the land using the Roman plow, and so on and so forth, and many more? Why open markets in locations where tribes used to fight each other? Why bother constructing churches, town halls, and roads?
¿Cuál es la intención? De matar a todos los indios y poner dos hospitales, de robarse todo el oro y de dar a la iglesia la compañía de todo el oro que había.
There should not be a black legend, but there should also not be a pink legend. All human actions have their ups and downs, and as Guyot says, the conquerors were not angels, but they were not devils either. Their true nature lies somewhere in between. The number of deaths was high because of diseases, and there were also instances of excesses, looting, and subjugation. The friars and the royal authority were in charge of denouncing and combating the abuses that were committed. But the truth is that travelers in the 18th century, like Alexander von Humboldt, claimed that life in Mexico was better than in Berlin or Paris. In the mines of Potosi, the salaries and working conditions were better than in the mines of Silesia. The entirety of that viceregal past has been deliberately hidden in order to reinforce the nationalism of each individual republic. Go check out a museum in any American city today, like the one I recently saw in downtown Santiago de Chile. Only a single painting depicting Pedro de Valdivia establishing the capital in 1541, and almost no other artworks on display until the Declaration of Independence in 1818. But it turns out that period of the Captaincy General of Chile lasted 277 years, and Republican Chile counts 206 years. Chile, similar to Mexico, similar to Ecuador, they do not want to narrate the story of those crucial 300 years under the viceroyalty, not colonial. Can you all explain to me what happened? Well, that silence is the work of good old-fashioned local flavor. The criollos, those Spanish offspring, not Indians, not blacks, not mulattoes or mestizos, who, taking advantage of the French invasion of Spain, seized power with weapons and money from England, and ideas from French Freemasonry. In that place, the criollos came to realize that the black legend played a vital role in achieving their objectives. Additionally, the groundbreaking concepts of the Jacobin France, which executed dissidents using the guillotine, eradicated the old regime. In the case of America, these ideas led to the expropriation of communal lands from indigenous people and their distribution among Creole masters, along with the indigenous population. Not surprising, as the documentary shows, the royalist troops that fought against Bolivar and his comrades were actually composed of blacks and Indians, the majority of whom were volunteers. They were the actual losers. However, once that hybrid independence is attained, the military leaders of Spanish descent and surnames informed the native people that the adversary was Spain. Without a doubt, the bad guys in the movie were those Spaniards, but the Spaniards from America, my dear sir. Is it true that in that situation I would have also signed the independence of Fernando VII, a tyrant and subservient Bourbon king before Napoleon, the French military leader? The unfortunate aspect was that everything was lost in insignificant small republics rather than in a significant nation such as Brazil, while concealing the history of 300 years, leading people to believe that the beginning was the year of independence. And that is taught nowadays in the schools of those countries. In any case, the black legend persists today in the Bolivarian left, that of Maduro's 21st century socialism, AMLO, Correa and company, who read that so victimistic and pro-communist book of the open veins of Latin America. The black legend also continues to exist in the indigenous movements of Chile or Ecuador, which appear to desire to go back to the state of savagery that was present prior to the arrival of the Europeans. However, I also witness it daily, the enduring existence of the black legend among some members of the Hispanic bourgeoisie, especially those of Creole lineage. Despite benefiting from money and higher education, these individuals continue to swallow and spread the colossal lie that the Hispanic civilization was a failed, responsible for the current state of backwardness in society. It's unfortunate that those smart and discerning individuals don't come to terms with reading the torrent of historical evidence, the facts that debunk the narrative. Unfortunate is the inferiority complex they have, which is a product of their flawed and shattered identity. It is sad to see your ignorance in thinking that the starting point of your countries was the day of that false independence, which ultimately resulted in caudillismo, civil wars, and widespread corruption. Many individuals feel Spanish when applying for a passport, which provides them with clear advantages. But it's sad that even though they are genetically and culturally Spanish, they talk about Spaniards as if they were foreigners, just like the French or the Germans are foreigners. It's also unfortunate that they go so far as to say that, well, it's true, the Spaniards left us the language, the religion, and little else. Because if we're so underdeveloped, it's because we weren't colonized by the English. Terrible. What a fallacy. There would not have been any mixing of races or a solitary Native American remaining alive if the English had launched an attack on them. According to a Mexican historian mentioned in the documentary, the Anglos in North America would often boast about it. But what angers me is that despite having the means and the privilege to travel to the rest of Hispanic America and Spain, the legendary Neo-Criollo black individual doesn't even feel that curiosity to know why. For example, on a Mediterranean cruise, they end up sitting at a table where they become friends with Mexicans, Colombians, or Spaniards they meet, and instead, they don't get along as well with the rest of the passengers, which is something that truly baffles me and leaves me pondering about the reasons behind it. Is it just because of the common language? It is also unfortunate to note that a small but influential part of that Hispanic elite bites the hook of divide and conquer that their ancestors, the so-called freedom-killing heroes like Bolivar, San Martin, Sucre, or Higgins, etc., once bit. So, that renowned black Creole individual embraces political division, causes under the pretext of decentralization. and seeks the fragmentation of his own country to make it more and more irrelevant, just like the 19 republics into which the Spanish Empire was balkanized, a situation that ultimately became insignificant and nearly resulted in the empire's collapse. It is truly unfortunate that this phenomenon is observed in cities as far apart from each other as Guayaquil or Barcelona. Why do you believe that is? The film reveals, with remarkable historical precision regarding its participants, and most importantly, through the universal language of art and music, the truth that, despite a 200-year separation caused by political barriers, we remain connected because we are still one family. The documentary Hispanoamérica makes us think that the potential we, the 500 million Hispanics, have is still impressive, and that sooner or later it will amaze the world. And why? Well, because the Hispanic world was a pioneer in something that humanity takes a long time to achieve: mestizaje. The blend of blood from various origins defines the rich diversity of Hispanic America.
España vino a América a reproducirse, a generar nuevas Españas, a hacer lo que llama Gustavo Bueno, un imperio generador.
No territory in the world, in fact, has achieved such integration of races and cultures that are so different. A combination, as the documentary insists, that was adopted ever since Isabel the Catholic decreed it back in the day. How strange that a town that seeks to subdue and enslave ends up being the conquered. For example, Hernán Cortés, conquered by La Malinche. Also, several noble Spanish gentlemen ended up marrying Inca princesses. The documentary is lengthy and detailed with breathtaking images and the music from that era, which is still preserved in musical notation from 3 centuries ago, that was saved in the Bolivian region of Beni. Hispanoamérica, Song of Life and Hope, showcases the richness of an indelible legacy. Spanish America has the highest number of cities designated as World Heritage Sites. The Baroque, already forgotten in Europe, lives on in America in its parties and traditions. Is it true that the documentary forgets about other legacies such as law, social organization, infrastructure like roads, ports or aqueducts, as well as the existence of a single market from North America to Tierra del Fuego? Although concerning trade, always a friend and brother of civilization, there is another recommended documentary about Spain, titled The First Globalization. And I am going to inform you about something. I possess an excellent friend from Ecuador who is doubtful regarding the Hispanic heritage, and he informed me that wherever he directs his gaze, he observes and reads things that are excessively optimistic about that genuinely obscure past. It is like it is a deliberate campaign, he informed me, and I am like, it is funny that the majority of individuals who oppose that black legend are not Spaniards, but rather esteemed historians from America, England, Ecuador, Argentina, or Mexico. These historians have not only conducted thorough research on documents and records, but they have also immersed themselves in the historical reality on the ground. It is also interesting that at the same time, there are individuals from Spain who aim to discredit that accomplishment by Americans, searching for and emphasizing all the negative aspects that did indeed exist, but completely suppressing the positive ones. They are retired professors who have become experts in the reality of America and have experienced it firsthand throughout their lives. Yes, that is another sensationalist version of the black legend that is used to sell books and support separatist, indigenous, and, interestingly enough, communist groups, specifically those associated with 21st century socialism. In any case, it is evident that an increasing number of individuals desire the revelation of historical truth in order to bring an end to the perpetuation of that negative reputation that has suppressed a magnificent area of the globe and the nation of Spain. Undoubtedly, this documentary has contributed to its destruction. Well, and that is the conclusion of this review of Hispanoam Canto de Vida y Esperanza. Just in case, this is not an advertisement. I don't have any commercial interest or contact with its authors, but I think that if the Hispanic culture is something that moves or touches you, you must see it. I would love to read your comments below. I want to thank you for the privilege of your company, and invite you to subscribe to this channel, which I do with complete and absolute independence. Thank you very much for your support and for being a part of this community.